Okay. All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for your patience while we figured that out. We just want to welcome you to this forum. This is Megan at Mind's Eye. So thanks for coming to Inspiring and Inciting Social Change Through Art and Civic Engagement. So here are just a couple tricks, and I am glad to see that someone's already raised their hand, so just hang on to that. That's the plan. I want to see as many hands up as possible. So today we are going to utilize raise your hand as much as possible. There's a little bar somewhere, either at the bottom or the top of your screen. Probably right in the middle is a little hand icon. So the way that will work is if you have a question, raise your hand. Then I'll hit a button and it will ask you to unmute. Ask your question, and then please remember to mute your microphone again after that. Keyboard shortcuts, if you're using Windows, it's Alt-Y, or Mac is Option-Y. Also, we have an ASL interpreter today, and captions are also provided. And this session will be recorded and emailed to you, also uploaded to the Mind's Eye YouTube channel. Also, you might have to, your closed captions might not be on, so make sure you hit the little CC button at the bottom of the bar if you want those. Also, just a quick reminder, you know that we have to do this. Don't forget to fill out your census. If you haven't yet, you have until August 11th to call in or to go to the website at my2020census.gov. I will send you this link with all the phone numbers, the Bosnian guide, the ASL guide from the YouTube video, and also a large print guide. Also, stick around to the end, and we're going to have a gift card raffle at the end for a gift card to Sweet Art and Catalyst Coffee Bar. Those are both bakeries. Sweet Art is also a cafe that are associated with art studios. The Catalyst is actually a part of Art St. Louis, so stick around to the end. And without further ado, Jason from Mind's Eye is going to take over and talk to our panelists.
Hello, everyone. Glad to have you out this morning, or have you via Zoom this morning. It's glad that we're kind of settling into this new normal, doing meetings this way. We really appreciate taking part in this panel because I think it's very important to what is going on currently in our environment, in our country right now, and in our region too as well. And I'm very pleased to have the group of panelists we do have talk about to lead this discussion. And I'll start off by introducing first Chris Worth. And Chris, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
First of all, my pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm a visual artist and community organizer with combined probably 20 years of experience in both of those areas. My focus in visual art has always primarily been painting. I also have ability, so I have cerebral palsy and ADHD, among other things. But I bring the reason I bring those identities up is because they impact my art and the way I use my art to engage in civic dialogue. I almost said civil. I don't always like to be civil. So I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to add my voice to this awesome panel. Thank you for having me.
Chris, we're glad to have you here this morning. And next person I want to introduce this morning is Alex Johnmeyer. And Alex, can you tell us a little about yourself and kind of why this being a part of this panel is important to you?
You have to unmute.
Is Is Alex there?
I was following directions and had myself muted.
No
Okay. So my name is Alex Johnmeyer. My pronouns are he, him, and I wanted to thank Chris for setting a precedent for all of us using our pronouns, so I didn't have to be the first person to do it. So I'm a visual artist. I've been painting for over 25 years. I mainly focus on working in watercolor and acrylic. And I'm also a trans queer man and am one of the co-founders of the Metro Trans Umbrella Group. So incorporating, volunteerism and my artwork has always been very important to me as an artist. I like to inspire other people to use their voices, not only in their own art, but also to inspire social change and to do what they can to improve our communities.
Thank you, Alex. And we're very glad to have you on this panel as well. Did Tiélere ever get in?
No, he has not texted or replied, and he hasn't shown up. So.
All right, so we'll go back and we'll go to our next panelist, and maybe eventually we'll get him in here. Next, I want to introduce Carmen Dence. I actually had the pleasure of working on a panel before with Carmen. Carmen, tell us a little bit about yourself today.
I hope I am unmuted. Everyone can hear me?
Yep.
All right. I head from Colombia, South America, as a grad student. And after a long career in the sciences, mainly at Washington University School of Medicine with the Department of Radiology, I gave full expression from early childhood to my second passion, which was dance, folk dancing, traditional rites and rituals, and so on. Eventually, after my retirement from the school about 4 years ago, I created and direct Grupo Atlántico. And our mission is to use the tools of dance and music to bring community together. The group is comprised of young people, adults, and older adults. So I teach in my own studio here in my house, kids from 8 years old all the way to as old as 90 plus years old. I am extremely happy to have been able to realize those two passions of my life. And St. Louis has been my home for close to 40 plus years. So I'm delighted to be here and to share with you any aspects of my life, and I'm extremely happy to be part of this panel and keep going with the movements and your own passion.
Thank you, Carmen. Like I said, a pleasure to have you on the panel today. And last but certainly not least, I want to introduce Marvin-Alonzo Greer. He's with the Missouri Historical Society. Marvin, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So thank you for having me. Again, my name is Marvin-Alonzo Greer, and I work for the Missouri Historical Society, but I'm a public historian, and I engage in living history and historical interpretation, meaning I dress up in historical attire and talk to the public, both in first person and in third person, helping contextualize history and bringing history to life. So in more, rather than a visual art, I'm more of a performance artist. And so I travel around the country doing that and hopefully adding context to different historical events, historical sites, and helping bring the stories of Black and brown people and minorities, including the LGBTQIA community and women, and telling and highlighting their stories in a historical context. So I delved really into the forgotten histories and the untold histories of people, and help bring that to life for the public, because oftentimes those are left out of our history books, they're left out of our museums and cultural institutions. And so I'm part of a numerous groups that help bring those stories to life, and make those a reality for the general public.
Very exciting. Like I said, we're excited to have you in the panel and everybody else. And I'm going to go ahead and jump us off with our first question, kind of leave this for everyone, and we'll kind of go in the order that, you know, everybody was introduced to answer this first question. Everybody is well aware of all the things with social unrest and social change, you know, the talk about social change and civic engagement that has really been a part of the country for a while, but even more so now in the last month or last 2 months. Just from kind of the organizations you work with or your personal projects, how has the recent social unrest and social talk about civic engagement really impacted your organization or things that you do? Or, you know, how's that kind of impacted you recently?
We're starting with me?
Yes,
So,
Chris, we'll lead off with you.
So it really got, so I work in through a lot of series. So I do visual series, and everything that's been going on has really got me thinking about my own privilege as a white cisgender queer bisexual who grew up in foster care. It's so easy. It used to be so easy for me to not recognize my privilege, right? And the fact that as a person with a disability, I can be as educated as I am and be as given pathways. It's easy for me to forget the amount of privilege that I come with just as a white cisgender male identifying person. So in my new series, I am really sort of reflecting on how much we have we benefited as a country, and even my white ass has benefited from the exploitation of folks. And I mean, in polite society, we talk about that all the time, but I'm trying to use my art to sort of dig at that emotionally a little bit, right? So that's what all this has done for me. So it's been a moment of not just self-reflection, because that's easy, but I'm also trying to put that into action, even more than I have in the past. Does that make sense?
Yes. And you know, Chris, before I let Alex hop in here too and kind of chime in that question, I want to ask you kind of a follow-up from something you just mentioned, you know, we were talking about. And I feel like, you know a lot of times in this situation, being African-American male, I see that what's in the spotlight, and then we talk about a lot of the African-American causes, but I always remember, you know, talking to other people, and when I go out in groups, you know, I'm talking about there's a lot of underrepresented groups. And one of the groups I talk about a lot, or, you know, working in the disabilities realm, is talking about how people with disabilities are underrepresented in a lot of things. And kind of when you talk about engagement through art and kind of being able to showcase your talents, do you feel kind of you want to help the representation, you know, for people with disabilities in the art spectrum too, and making sure people are able to say like, oh, you know, from maybe they had previous misconceptions and things of that nature.
So can I just add a little bit to that?
Sure.
So it's funny because historically, there are so many artists that are in the history books with disabilities that we never talk about, right? Some of them have hidden disabilities. Some of them, like Frida Kahlo, who's gotten some attention since a sort of recent movie, have a physical disability. But there are so many folks with disabilities who have impacted the art world that we totally ignore that piece of history, because as a society, we're still looking for physical perfection. Right? We still want you to fit a certain mold. So I often think about, just being an artist who I sell some work. I've had work collected. That is a level of privilege that I want to highlight, right? Because more people with disabilities need to be able to do that, right? Need to be able to sell their work. But also, I want to point out that there are only a few African American people currently modern artists who are on the scene, and I know there are a lot more in there making great work. So we need to highlight that that exists, right? The people with disabilities have impacted our culture and continue to do so, and they come from every sort of crossroad of life and identity. I don't know if I question or.
Yeah, that was perfect, Chris. Thank you for answering that follow-up question that I had for you there. And kind of getting back now, I want to shift over to Alex here and kind of the original question we talked about. How has recent social unrest kind of impacted your personal thoughts or your organization?
Well, as an artist, as an individual, it's obviously impacted my family. I have a spouse and a child, and Chris talked about privilege, and then that is definitely the most important thing that all of this has brought into focus for me is that I have a home studio. Whenever my husband and I, we moved, we purposefully wanted to build me my own space. So we took what was our 2-car garage and turned it into my art studio. So, and I recognize now that since we're all in quarantine, having my own space, I wake up in my home, I go out to my studio, I paint, I'm still here. That's not the case for everyone. Not everyone has the ability to create at home, to express and, the way they did before quarantine. But as far as the civil unrest, it's been heartbreaking for our POC community. I wish I could lie and say that I've been so inspired to create and make paintings that speak on this, but I've honestly been struggling to feel that I have the right to speak on this because I'm not a POC person. And then, as a white person, obviously, I want to amplify the voices of other POC artists and activists here in St. Louis. So I've been on my social media, I'm like, hey, this is my friend's work, and trying to promote other artists and other activists right now. So it's been rough, obviously, on all of us. For MTUG, Metro Trans Umbrella Group, we have been providing supplies, and we have a food pantry that provides, any kind of food items, but also toiletries for our community, for trans and non-binary and genderqueer humans. And before the quarantine, we were serving maybe 16 individuals a month. And now we're serving about 30 individuals a day, every day. So we're literally doing 30, you know, times the amount of, you know, providing for our community, because a lot of trans and queer people don't have health insurance. A lot of our trans, you know, members of MTUG lost their jobs, and it's been rough, especially for those families who have children. So one of the services that I'm so thankful that, you know, in addition to our support groups, and we have a free clothing closet, MTUG, you know, especially during this now, the quarantine, and it just means a lot to me that MTUG is able to provide that service for our community. So, however, I have multiple health issues. Like, I'm high risk for like 6 reasons. So I'm not at MTUG in person. I'm supporting from home, and, you know, doing what I can from Creve Coeur. But one of the things I am doing right now to actively engage is I volunteer with a group called Arts is Healing, which provides free art therapy classes for individuals living with chronic illnesses and cancer. And we have weekly Zoom classes, Zoom art classes. And so I have been participating in that. It's been a way that we can bring art therapy and a sense of community into the homes of these individuals who, you know, right now, we're all, you know, for example, this Zoom call right now, we're all very separated. And so it's been good that Arts is Healing can still reach, you know, our students who need that right now. And also to go back to MTUG, you know, MTUG is still having our support groups via Zoom. So our trans femme group, our trans masculine group, our non-binary group, we have a reading group. MTUG is still, even though we're all very separated right now, we are still like working together.
Very, very good. Thank you for that. You know, thank you for
Tiélere's here.
Oh yeah. And actually, I have a follow-up for you too, Alex. This is going to be a different follow-up,
Okay.
because you have some very unique artwork here that is on the screen, and I could probably butcher describing this, but I'm gonna let you, because I know there's some people in here that do have visual impairment, that I was gonna ask you could describe some of the stuff that we have sitting kind of on your slide screen here, some of the artwork you have.
Yeah. So I'll start with this one that's on the screen right now. It's called Manufacturer's Packaging. And what it is a painting of visually. I will describe that first, and then I'll go into the symbolic representation of what it means to me. So it is a painting of 2 mannequins who are human in figure, but are quite obviously plasticine. They are obviously not human. So I wanted to make it obvious that these are not actual humans. Their skin tone is in colors of gold and bright yellow, with highlights and shadows of lime green, dark green, bronze, browns, and then there are very bright reflective pearls hanging from the necks of both of the mannequins. The mannequin in the distance is standing in profile looking towards your right, and the mannequin in the middle of the painting is I would say in the middle of the painting, but looking off into the distance. So the skin, if you will, the skin of these mannequins is highly reflective. But it's quite obvious that these are not humans. And then the background is a rather nondescript ceiling, but it's, you know, if you've ever been in a mall or retail space, you can tell that this, you know, is indoors. And it's that drop ceiling. If you've ever been familiar with a drop ceiling, you know what that looks like. So I wanted it to be clear that this is in a store, in a retail setting, and that once again, these are not humans, but they are humanoid figures. How is that for a description?
That was excellent. We might have to sign you up. wait. We may have to talk to you after this session, see what we can do.
Thank you. What this painting represents to me is not judging a a object or a person by its appearance, by its skin color, or by its gender representation. So these are mannequins. They are meant to look human, and perhaps we as the viewer would perceive these as female mannequins, female Caucasian mannequins. But I wanted the skin to be yellow and tones of yellow and green and gold and bronze, to say, well, these aren't necessarily Caucasian. They, that I wanted the skin color of the mannequins to be ambiguous. And I wanted, really the message of these paintings is not to judge other people based on what we think we see. So, whether that be gender or, judging someone else by the color of their skin, that there's more to us as humans than the package that we were made, that we were given.
Wow, that's very powerful when you look at that, and kind of especially what we're talking about today. So thank you for sharing, and thank you for describing that, because I definitely wanted people to understand what they, even if you were someone who, like for me, who's perfectly sighted, I still, now that you put that in perspective, it adds a lot more power to that piece for me, because now I understand exactly what I can see what you were going for.
Yeah, and I wanted, so the eyes of the mannequin in the middle of the painting there are not actual eyeballs. They are just blank, and the same like tones and shadows as the rest of the mannequin. So the mannequin cannot quote unquote see, and I wanted that to be representative of how we should not judge based on what we see. That sight is not always most important. It's learning and what we through talking through other individuals, and it is that's what's most important.
Definitely. Thank you, Alex. I really appreciate that. And now we'll go on to Carmen. I know you were up next. Did Tiélere join us?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes, I'm here. Hi.
Okay, so before I go, Carmen, we'll go back. So what we did here, Tiélere Cheatem is on a line with us on this Zoom meeting with us too. I'm going to ask you two. You're going to have a bunch of rundown here too. So first, just give people a little bit of background about yourself, but also what we were talking about right now is just how has the recent social unrest kind of impacted your organization or yourself or your personal stuff that you're working on?
Okay. Well, my name is Tiélere Cheatem. I am a queer Black artist here in the St. Louis area. I'm originally from Indiana, but have lived in St. Louis for, I want to say, a little over 12 years now, and have been creating art for, actually my 11-year anniversary is about to come up, so that's exciting. But I have been creating for that long, and the pieces that are presented, if I may describe them for a bit, the pieces that I presented are pieces that just kind of go along the lines of the rest of my work that is on Instagram, where there's always a subject matter, there's always a story behind it, or a conversation that doesn't often get spoken about. The piece, La Rage Euphoric, which means the euphoric rage, if you will, that piece speaks onto the mental the health battles that we often face, not just with everything else in the world, but with ourselves. And so I wanted to capture that, where it has a total of 3 faces. It has my face looking straight on in frontal view, and then it has 2 faces coming out of my side. And those 2 faces are an expression of the highs and lows of mental health. I'm someone who definitely goes through depression often, and it is a constant battle to keep moving forward and keep just the day-to-day life moving. And so I put the crown in the background, as in like conquering my own battles on a day-to-day basis, and to show that composure in the face and that calm peace of mind as well. But again, as you can see, the two faces on the side, it just shows like the internal struggle on the outside. And the colors that I use for, I'm someone who prefers to use colors versus just black, whites, and grays and muted tones. I prefer to use colors because I feel like that is a great way to express exactly what one's feeling. And so the colors I used were reds, rich reds, greens, lime greens, and oranges and purples. And then for my self-portrait, which is faced on in the center, it's in black and white. So that way everything gives like a nice pop to it. And then the second piece I did with Painted Black STL, which is an organization that I just recently joined here in St. Louis. This organization is was created to empower Black artists here within St. Louis, uplift their voices further, as well as their work and their message, and partner them with businesses here in St. Louis to get their work not just on boards they use to protect their buildings, but also to create murals like on the sides as well. And so to kind of go with the second question that you've asked, this has impacted my life in a multitude of ways. So aside from being a painter, I'm also a professional performer here in St. Louis. So theater, acting, singing, dancing, opera, different concerts as well. And I'm a fitness instructor. So this pandemic I was telling a friend of mine, I went from being really busy and all over St. Louis and constantly on the go to the only thing I have now is my artwork to do. And I'm grateful that I have that and that people are buying work at a time such as now, because if they weren't, then there would be nothing, absolutely nothing for me. This pandemic has been such a high and low, and just the situations of life that have been happening too with the Black Lives Matter movement, the constant death toll. It's weird. I'm not sure if anyone else has felt this way, but speaking for myself, it's been one of those where I feel like the stories have hit too close to home. And so for me, it was like a constant battle just to be encouraged, to keep working, to keep moving forward. There was always something that was happening in the news that I felt defeated by. Felt like it wasn't necessary for me to keep working, but I have. And when I joined Painted Black STL, that for me felt like a moment where I was like, okay, now here's my voice. Here's the time for me to not only speak and be amplified, as loud, as clear, and unapologetic, but I can also get pull focus onto a subject that is very important to me, as well as many other lives, or at least it should be. And so with the second piece that I have showing, the title of it is called I Matter. And there's a total of 5 of them throughout St. Louis. And each piece says I Matter. It's called the I Matter series. And each piece features a Black man, or as the second piece, a Black trans man. And these pieces they showcase the beauty of the people in my community. There's tons of colors, like rich blues, purples, greens, reds, just every color under the sun that I could find, really, to showcase the beauty of our skin and the richness of it. And what I did is I made sure that each person that I was painted had their head held up high. so that for those who could see it, especially for those in the Black community who would see these pieces around St. Louis, they would see that there is someone that not only looks like them, but this person has their head up with confidence. This person is not weighed down by the struggles of the world, but is still rising above it and staying firm. I wanted my work to symbolize hope and to be re-encouraging for my community, versus them to consistently see a struggle and for that to be in front of their faces and to not be encouraged. I wanted there to be something else. Since in this day and age, it seems like you can get on the media and whatever encouragement you may have found to uplift yourself as a Black person, I feel like within the next 5 minutes, it's completely like diminished. So I felt that it was very important to get that message out there, but also keep it going.
Man, that last thing you just said, you know, kind of, I really related to, because it's not in the next 5 minutes. You can find something that's very uplifting, and you can scroll, if you're in your Facebook news feed, scroll down a couple paces and you can find something that completely take away that uplifting feeling that you just had from something else that you read or someone else's comments or thought process to what you were. So yeah, that just, like, whenever you said that, it just totally resonated with me, because I think I've been going through that a lot lately, like social media fatigue.
Yes. It is definitely a thing. I was speaking with a friend of mine yesterday who lives in New York and is a psychologist, and he was expressing the Native American psychologist at that. So he and I both were expressing just our frustrations and our fatigue with everything now. And I was explaining to him, I was like, you know, it's weird. I've been working, and I'm very grateful for that. Very, very grateful for the fact that I've been able to work and consistently work. But I've spiritually and mentally and creatively as well been in this limbo state of mind, if I may call it that. And in this limbo state, it's just physically there, but mentally you're like somewhere else. Creatively, you're somewhere else. And spiritually, you're somewhere else. You're just like waiting for the change to happen, you know, or something to happen to come out of it. And even though I was creating all of these murals and making sure the message was clear that our lives do indeed matter, each one of our lives do indeed matter, I felt with everything that was happening, it was just like taking me to a different place. And part of me, I was telling him, part of me felt like that it was a way for me to cope with everything that had been happening. And as I was getting towards the end of doing the last mural, it was like starting to come towards the end of it, where it's like, okay, you know, it's a whole new level of encouragement and a new perspective on where I need to take my work next, and how much more important it is for me to speak and for me to have a voice and to utilize all my platforms to make my voice heard more.
Yeah, it's like that. Definitely, like I said, definitely thank you for coming in and sharing that. And we'll definitely have some more questions for myself and the audience for you here in a little bit. But let's shift to Carmen Dence and kind of get your perspective on that. You know, how has recent social unrest and all the things going on kind of impacted what you're doing on a day-to-day basis?
Certainly. It has had a tremendous impact in our work. Up to now, we have to postpone and probably cancel practically every program that we had on for this year. There is no way that we could amalgamate the rehearsals and social distancing and usually the impact that we had in every one of our members. So I canceled rehearsals completely. Every one of our members had their personal responsibility to keep up with the training, with the visualization, if they can come up with the way to imagine themselves in this circle that now is not possible, the circle of traditional dance. So that has been the impact number one. There is that. But at the same time, I say there is a wonderful opportunity that had come up from the struggle that has made me personally and many of the people in the group more keen on having that expansion of culture. I'm taking a lot more courses online through wonderful organizations, exchanging concepts on how we can teach and how we can integrate the passion that we have for community and dance, not just on one style of dance, but make it be valid for all of us. And that in itself has been a big improvement, because it's not only the very classical ballet and modern and whatever you want to call it, but the fundamental for me are always the traditional dances. So the fact that now I have the time to assimilate more and more into the importance of what we do as a group, that has been empowering. There is also more relations and projects that I'm working with people in the community. There are specific things that had impacted the Hispanic community more tremendously than any other community, because we are bordering. We are bordering the South with a whole world of Hispanics, and we have not always have been treated correctly. So there is that moment in which I feel what is going on with Black Lives Matter is just like the previous panelist says, I matter, you matter, we matter. And the Hispanic community in St. Louis in particular is a very diverse community, but we are joined strongly to our beliefs in education, helping each other, helping especially our youth to achieve the dream of bettering their life. And there are groups such as the Hispanic leader groups, just to name one, that had been very vocal, along with the rest of each one of the heads of different societies and groups to raise money, as an example, for scholarships. Grupo Atlántico is one of many, many other groups that has raised thousands of dollars that are going into the education of the Spanish youth. And we are very proud of that as a Hispanic community. There are times in which being a woman of color, it has been also in some ways a privilege, I have to say. I was mentored from the early years of my life expressing what I wanted to do, and I took great advantage of that. So I believe mentoring for all of us as artists, as leaders, social leaders, and just plain good human beings is something so critical for who is coming after us. So the impact of quarantine, the impact of Black Lives Matter is felt all over, really. And if you want to even expand that one to the world, we have a lot to learn from each other, a lot to help each other, and I think it's happening. And I'm positive. I am always say, with a smile, you can probably conquer half of the world, and it uses fewer muscles in your face and improve even your appearance. So keep smiling, keep working, and keep that joy that is going to, at the end, help someone. But you cannot be there during the actual let's say expression in the street. You can always help economically. You can always help by being a supportive, strong arm from someone that needs you. And to me, those are always priorities, especially as I am reaching an older age. And believe it or not, one of the major problems that we have right now, as far as being pushed aside, is ageism. Anyone that is not your 20 to 40 is going to experience that, and that shouldn't be. So we have to join forces. We have to try harder to value that man, that woman who have given so much and is now your mentor or your person to look at to. So combat ageism is one of my concerns, and use any power, any tools that you have to raise another human being, or for whatever reason this person may need your help. But be open, be kind, and smile.
Carmen, very well said. I know you've been a great leader when it comes to diversifying the arts in our region for quite some time. So thank you again for those words. I know we'll get back. I know people probably have questions. So before we get to, I'm going to, after, ask Marvin the same question I've asked everybody else, we're going to open the floor for, if you want to raise your hand or drop a question in the Q&A box for any of our panelists or for all of them. I'm going to allow you guys some time to come up with your questions that you have too. But before we get to that, Marvin, you can kind of, that question we asked, you can kind of continue and kind of give us your thoughts on how is social unrest or civil unrest, kind of the recent stuff going on, really impacted yourself and what you guys do at the Missouri Historical Society?
So I'm kind of glad I got to go last because I was able to hear all of the amazing points that my colleagues here have made. And I would say that for the Missouri Historical Society specifically, it's really helped. It really helped my white colleagues and my colleagues that are not people of color to help bring more awareness and to kind of show that what our community in St. Louis is experiencing and what Black and brown people throughout the world are experiencing is a reality. It's also, I think, put a little bit more pressure on on the St. Louis community to take action. I've never seen protests and demonstrations that are this diverse or that have been majority white. Not just fighting for Black Lives Matter, but specifically fighting for Black trans lives. And while I'm not trans, oftentimes we look at our communities as being as African Americans, just kind of like for the straight community, but making sure that we are encompassing and knowing that that there are marginalized communities within our own communities, and so. Making sure, I think it's really helped me at work, talk to my colleagues, definitely those who are allies, and helping to promote voices that have either been marginalized or forgotten about. And so I kind of carried that into my own personal life as well. The reinvigorating the conversations around what memorials and monuments mean has been a really awesome discussion that we've had, both at Soldiers Memorial and the Missouri Historical Society, as well as throughout the country. Chris actually brought up the point of public art pieces and artwork that has been created by people with disabilities and exceptionalities. And working at Soldiers Memorial, we're actually really fortunate to have probably one of the largest pieces of public art that was created by someone with a disability. Probably I'll say in St. Louis specifically. I don't know if it's the largest, but it's definitely probably one of the largest. And it's the Hillis Arnold statue that sits at Soldiers Memorial, which is on the corner of 13th Street and Market Street. And it's a giant statue that's probably 30, 40 feet tall. And it's called the Broken Bayonet statue. And it's a broken bayonet. Bayonets are used in the military for killing and hurting people, but a broken bayonet symbolizes peace. And Hillis Arnold was an art teacher here in St. Louis, and he was deaf. And so to have this statue, even though it's not promoted as being built by someone and designed by someone with a disability, I think having that inclusivity as part of that historical narrative and that historical landscape is really important to better understanding who we are as St. Louisans and who we are as Americans as a whole, because people with disabilities and people of color have been around since the beginning of time. And so making sure that that historical narrative is put in its proper context and place, I think, is very important when discussing where we live in space, place and space, when both discussing public art as well as the historical narratives. I've been contacted by quite a few people asking to discuss like what the role of Confederate monuments are, or Christopher Columbus statues and things, both in St. Louis as well as throughout the country. And I think this is a really exciting time to really to dive into these ideas of these pieces of art that were created decades ago, sometimes hundreds of years ago, and what do they mean? Actually, I was just on this morning, I was looking through my Instagram feed, and there was a statue of a slave trader that was pulled down in Bristol, England. And this man was one of the largest slave traders in British history. And they protesters pulled that down a number of weeks ago. And I think within the past couple of days, the city of Bristol, England actually put up a statue of a Black woman holding up the Black Power fist. And she has natural hair, and she's wearing kind of a black jacket. And it's just amazing to see this transform of narratives, and how art is a symbol of the times that people live in, and they're expressions of the artist, they're expressions of the community. And whether it's a historical piece of art, which is a statue of Robert E. Lee, or a slave trader, or it's a painting, these are all still telling a story. They're still expressing something. And there have been pieces of art that have been torn down for decades and generations. The founders of our country in New York City on July 4th, 1776, pulled down a statue to King George that sat in New York. So part of our founding has been the removal of offensive and problematic imagery. And when we put up images to Christopher Columbus, when we put up images to Confederate leaders, not only were they did they peddle in slavery and in genocide and murder, but these people, especially the Confederates, also betrayed the nation. We don't see, and I guess I would ask the question: would there be anyone who would advocate for a statue of Timothy McVeigh, who attacked a federal building, killed dozens of people? Would we advocate for statues of Nazis? I think not. And so why would one then? And there are people who descend from Germans who fought in the German army, but we still don't advocate for that type of public art to be displayed. You can still honor your ancestors. You can make art to hang around your house. You can make art to give to your friends. But if it's going to be on public land, if it's going to be financed by tax dollars and maintained by the public, should it be allowed? And that's the question. I think museums like the Missouri Historical Society, like Soldier Memorial, are great places to have those conversations. Having forums like this are great places to have those conversations. And those, I believe that those monuments and memorials should be taken down and placed in museums so they can be actually talked about like we would if you took someone to an art museum. What was the artist's intent? When was this being put up? I'll admit, as I'm jogging or walking through different parks, I don't always stop and read the plaques. I do probably more than the average visitor because I'm a history nerd. I'm like, ooh, who was this person? But there's only so much you can put on a text panel on a plaque at a memorial. So I really do think we as a community need to think more critically about who we're lionizing and who we're raising up, and what those symbols mean, what they mean to communities. While they may enhance your understanding of your own heritage, what does that mean to someone else? What does that mean to our indigenous brothers and sisters who have been marginalized and terrorized and systematically murdered for hundreds of years by both the British government, the French governments that colonized this area, the United States, the Spanish government, and then as well as the United States government. And so when we think about our, like Carmen was saying, when we think about others and we think about other members of our community, we are one united fabric, and there is no United States without all of us. I grew up in the South. I grew up in Atlanta, and we say y'all quite a bit. And so I really do think that y'all means all. So we can't just say this only affects the Black community, this only affects the LGBTQIA community, this only affects our Latinx brothers and sisters, this only affects our brothers and sisters with disabilities and exceptionalities. But what affects one person affects all of us. And I think that this current unrest in the country, I'm glad that it's happening. I think it needs to keep up. I support the protesters. I support Black Lives Matter. And I think that as long as that pressure stays up, it's going to keep pressure on those in power and to make systemic changes. And I hope that those allies who are pushing for change are not just pushing for that change for the African American communities, but those same communities of color and our brothers and sisters with disabilities and exceptionalities. I think that this idea transcends just African Americans, but needs to be upheld for all people.
I definitely a lot of great points there, Chris. Marvin, I appreciate you, speaking on those behalf and talking about that from the historical side, because that's been a side recently that, it's really been focused on a lot in this country about, the monuments and statues. So kind of getting that perspective from you is very enlightening. And we did get one Q&A question from the audience, kind of question / compliment. I want to definitely, her compliment is very valid. This is a wonderful panel. This comes from Joan Lipkin. Thanks to all of you, and it's lovely to see the visual arts represented more than it often is. If they want to get in touch with anyone, because I know today we still have a little bit more time, but I know there's a lot of stuff we're only going to scratch the surface with a lot of these things. And I know a lot of people want to continue these conversations outside of this forum later. They just want to know if you guys are willing to share your contact info with the audience members. They want to continue these discussions with you later.
That's fine by me.
Sure.
It's
Yes.
perfectly fine. Yes.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask, so Call Me an Old Man. I didn't realize that both of my paintings were on the screen and that I was supposed to talk about both my paintings until Tiélere talked about both of his paintings, because I had my Zoom, all of your faces on top of that painting on my screen. So is it okay if I talk about my second painting?
Yes, please do.
So Call Me an Old Man. I did not even see the second half of my screen earlier. So I was like, oh shit. Okay. So I apologize for going out of turn here. I truly apologize. But the second painting was actually the one that Megan, the coordinator of the arts and culture, this is the one she actually wanted me to talk about, and I didn't talk about it at all. So so the second piece is called Different from Us. And I was inspired to create this to represent, okay, so I'm going to explain it visually first for those individuals who cannot see it. Now, maybe you don't even know what Candyland is. Candyland is a children's game that has tiny little pieces that look like men, little plastic men that are kind of, similar to like a gingerbread cookie. So, but they're very small. They're only like 1.5 inches tall. So on that scale, imagine a red, a yellow, and a blue figures standing, and it would appear that the red Candyland man pushed the green Candyland man down. There we go. So the green man is laying with his face down, and you could either be confused that he's just fallen down, or that perhaps even that he's dead. And the yellow and blue men are standing to the side, just standing there looking down on him. And they're all smiling because that's what Candyland men, that's what those pieces do. And so what this represents for me symbolically is that the red, yellow, and blue pieces, those are primary colors in the color wheel. And the green man is a secondary color. And so the primary colors pushed the secondary color down. And even though the red one is the one who pushed him down, the yellow and blue ones did not help him back up and did not come to his defense. And so I was inspired to make this every year. I volunteer, and also I donate my work to an organization that was formerly known as the St. Louis Effort for AIDS, but now they've joined with other groups across the nation. And so now they're called Vivient Health here in St. Louis. So they have a fundraiser every August called Art of Pause. And so for Art of Pause every year, I make a painting that for me is about diversity and equality, because most of the individuals who attend the Art of Pause are activists and LGBT and POC and individuals who want to make a difference here in St. Louis regarding, social change and AIDS and awareness and HIV, fighting HIV. The Pause program with Vivient Health specifically provides funding for individuals living with HIV and AIDS for their pets, so that while it's very expensive for those individuals to HIV and AIDS medication, and then all of the health supplies that go along with those, with both of those diseases. So the Pause programs provides food and and health supplies, anything that those individuals would need so that they can afford to keep their pets. But so for 7 years now, every August I make another piece that is, the theme is diversity and equality. And this was one of my pieces that, like, I feel it speaks on that perfectly. And it's one of my most popular pieces to boot. A friend of mine who's a teacher, he bought a copy and he put it in his classroom, and he uses it as an example to teach the children about anti-bullying. And then the children's hospitals, the transgender unit at Children's Hospital, they have a giclée of it hanging in their office. So yeah, it's one of my pieces that, like, on appearance it looks very happy, but symbolically, whenever it's a much deeper and perhaps even darker meaning to it. So there. Thanks for letting me talk about that.
No, thank you. Thank you for sharing that information about that, because that is, like I said, just like I pointed about the one you shared earlier, it adds definitely a more powerful meaning when you do break it down and do share a concept with us. Because we've all, I think, allowed us to play Candyland. It's been a while, let's put it that way for me. Even it's been a little minute, but definitely glad that you were able to shed some light in that piece too and describe that for everyone. And like I said, you do a very good job describing. So we're gonna have to talk to you after this. So
thank you.
Do you mind if
I'm gonna get a couple? Anyone have any questions? I didn't see any hands raised or any of that thing of that nature.
I can't. I'm having trouble. The raise hand feature isn't very accessible for me.
Yeah.
But this is Chris. Can I describe my painting?
Yes, please do.
So, like I said in my spiel in the beginning, I've been using a lot of reflective tools to sort of check my own power, examine what we've done historically for 400 years to people of color and Black people specifically. And this painting is a part of a series, and it's about all about power and anxiety, actually. And it's about 3 feet by 3 feet. It has a white border. All my paintings are on paper. They have a white border usually, and there's a figure at the bottom with no legs. And there's sort of a stream of white, stream of kind of greenish blue fluid coming out of the legs. And the figure has its arm raised to a golden sort of church-like void, and the arm is raised above and crosses over this pinkish figure. The figure on the ground is, I think, for me, a person of color, and the pinkish figure is a sort of, I don't like to, it's an otherworldly figure, and that figure is leaning down and feeding the figure who's sort of bleeding out with a blue jug. So in my mind, this piece sort of talks about how we've used people of color to sort of propagate, sort of grow our culture, and kind of stolen pieces of their labor, not sort of stolen, stolen pieces of their labor to create beautiful things and prosperity. So, around the figure on the ground, and also the figure standing up, are these poppy kind of flowers, kind of growing up around, and not quite into the gold space, but coming out of the mouth of the figure on the ground is this stream of, or not out of the mouth, but out of the eyes is this stream of, can everybody see it? Is the stream of yellow gold. And above, sort of boxing all of that in, sort of an expression of heaven, maybe. I don't know about that, but maybe. There's a kind of bluish dots all the way around the top. A blue field with white dots. So that's, I don't know if that was a sufficient description for our visually impaired and blind listeners, but I tried. Don't hire me.
I would say we're going to put a fill out for you after this too, Chris.
Yeah.
We're gonna see what you got going on for our description note. I thank you for describing that.
Thanks.
And I know that so thank you, Chris. I want to thank all our panelists again, but I have kind of one more question. Anyone can, kind of chime in here on the panel. And I was having a discussion the other day with someone, and it was in regards to sports. We were talking about how sports has changed, the narrative for, whether, you go back to the 60s, you go back to Jackie Robinson, you go back to when Muhammad Ali was in his prime and, kind of going to the Vietnam War and things of that issues. So, you talk about Colin Kaepernick now. But and we talked about how they changed the narrative for social change in America, in this country. And I'm just looking for, maybe there's examples of how, arts and entertainment and cultural events and cultural institutions have helped change the narrative for social change and how they can continue to do so in the future. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts or think any of the panelists would like to share anything on that particular question.
I can take that from a historical perspective, but I do want to say my mom just put a thing in the chat box saying that she wanted to purchase, see more people's art so she can purchase some stuff. So I think she'll be able to have that opportunity at the end of the conversation. But that being said, I think the narrative that I hear a lot of people who say, like, pretty much just shut up and play, they don't understand that sports aren't inherently political, but sports have always been political from the beginning of time through today. At least from the American perspective, jockeying and the horse racing was widely popular historically, and usually you had a young enslaved boy or a very small enslaved man that would be your jockey. And so you're using, like Chris was saying, you're using Black labor and Black talents to enrich yourself. On the 4th of July, around the turn of the century, there was a man named Jack Johnson, who was one of the heavyweight champions of the world, African-American man. He drove flashy cars, he wore fur coats, he pretty much only dated white women, which, again, this is like 1900 America, so that was a big no-no. And on July 4th, sometime in the early 1900s, they pitted Jack Johnson against this white man who'd gone to retirement. They brought him out of retirement to be the great white hope, to hopefully bring down Jack Johnson, who was undefeated. Obviously, Jack Johnson won. But again, that was a political move to try to prove white supremacy and superiority over African Americans. Don Carlos at the Olympics and giving the Black Power fists and having in Mexico having those gold and silver medals taken away, their white ally from Australia pretty much was ostracized in Australia for the rest of his life because he gave his Black competitors those black gloves to kind of give the Black Power fist. And so this idea that that you can separate free speech and you can separate sports from politics, I don't think is doable. It wasn't until September 11th that the national and flying the American flag was popular throughout all American sports. And again, that was 9/11. So people were, I'm not saying that people shouldn't have been, but Americans came together and wanted to be extra patriotic to show their patriotism. And sports venues capitalized on that by manipulating what the American flag meant and what America means. And so I think it really, the idea of sports and activism, I would say that athletes have a moral responsibility because they have a platform to speak out when they see injustice. They are able to push back when others can't. They also have the world's ear. People want to hear what they have to say. I would say that Colin Kaepernick is especially important because he sacrificed millions of dollars. He could have shut up. He could have been quiet and made his millions and been fine. But he took a multi-million-dollar pay cut to not have a job, to speak out and say that Black Lives Matter and to end police brutality. He listened to a veteran when he said, "Hey, sitting down is disrespectful." Okay, well, I can kneel. And I think when you open your ears to listen to other people's perspectives, and you're actually trying to hear, you're not listening to respond and say, "Okay, Jason, I got you," or "I found a flaw in your argument." You're saying, "No, I really want to hear what your perspective is." I think that makes us a stronger community. And I think that that athletes have a huge responsibility in that, because they have that platform, because most of them are people of color, to use that voice, use that agency to make social change. Because unfortunately, the powers that be and the masses might not listen to everyone on this call, but they will listen to a LeBron James, they'll listen to a Colin Kaepernick, they'll listen to these household names. And so they have a role in what we're doing as artists, through our art and through our different mediums, shifting the narrative and creating these conversations. I think these athletes have a role and responsibility in highlighting and amplifying those voices and the work that we're all doing.
Jason?
Yes, Carmen.
I would completely agree with the comments by previous panelists. And I just wanted to share with all of us, the audience, a wonderful book that I am reading, have felt, Care of the Soul. And if you allow me, I would like to read a very short paragraph that talks about exactly how art teaches us to respect imagination as something far beyond human creation and intention. To live our ordinary life artfully is to have this sensibility about the scenes of daily life, to live more intuitively, to be willing to surrender a measure of our own rationality and control on return for the goods of the soul, I would say for the goods of society. The example of artists teaches us that every day we can transform ordinary experience into the materials of soul or our life. So you can use diaries, drawings, music, letters, watercolor, anything that is part of your everyday life. Art is not confined and goes beyond a museum, an art gallery, or anything else. It lives within us. And I would like to re-emphasize the way that I feel the contribution of art to change society in that way.
Yeah, very powerful that you just shared that, Carmen. And I said all our panelists has been sharing, you know, that what you just mentioned is something I know a lot of people look at how they can move forward. I know Ariel Acker asked in the question, the Q&A, you know, what is one thing that you would like other arts and cultural institutions and organizations to do going forward to help you feel more visible and empowered? And I think that's one of the ways, kind of when you look at, you know, that insert from that book, of how we can start shaping those narratives and start changing some of the things that they're doing to, you know, further along the conversation. I know Megan is, I know we're gonna have to turn this back over. I know we had a couple questions, but Megan, where are we at on time? I know we're getting close here.
Sorry, unmute. Yeah, we are getting right up to 10 o'clock. We do have some more questions in the chat and in the Q&A, but we can, I can email those over to the panelists if that's okay with everybody. I'll email them over because we are just about to run out of time. Is everyone okay with that?
I'm sad that we're running out of time.
Yeah.
I know we could be here all day, I think. But if we're all okay with that, I will email those over. And also when I send out, I'll email that over. And then when I send out the recording, I can add that into that email that I'll send out to you guys.
So do you want us to respond to them and then you're going to email them back to the participants, or?
Sure, if you guys want to respond, or whoever wants to respond to them, I will put those answers to those questions in the email with the recording and the links that I'm going to send out.
That's an awesome idea.
Good with that?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, cool. Then I'm going to turn it over to Angela for 1 second. Angela, you good?
I'm good. One moment.
And Angela has something really exciting for us.
Ta-da! Thanks for joining us today. And we've got a couple of gift cards, as Megan's mentioned at the beginning. So I'm going to spin my magic wheel and enjoy.
It's pretty fun, right?
Right? Okay.
So fun.
I think that's
Right?
so we have 2 gift cards, one for Sweet Art and one for Catalyst Coffee Bar. So Angela's gonna do one more. Okay, and I failed to describe, it's a wheel with everybody's, a colorful wheel, red, yellow, green, blue, and everybody's who is participating right now, their last name is in it, and when I click my screen, it spins the wheel. Aha.
All right.
Congratulations, Chris Blair, and I think that was Ray was the first person. So I will email you guys directly some info about that.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Thanks, Angela. I've got just a couple more slides that I'm going to share, just the thank yous and such. So everybody hang on for just a second while I get that up there. And so here is, some people were asking about links. You do not have to hurry up and write these down really quickly because I'm going to email them to everybody. If you can't wait, you can take a picture right now. This will have links for all the panelists. It also has links for LAMP interpreters and alternative communication services, who is doing our captions, and also the census links. And also, after this is over, you're going to get a survey emailed to you. Please, it'll just take a couple seconds. It would be very helpful if you did that. We also want to thank our sponsors, the Lutheran Foundation of St. Louis, Ameren, Illinois, Arts and Education Council, Lighthouse for the Blind, St. Louis, and Emerson, who make this possible. And we want to thank, of course, our panelists, Chris Worth, Carmen Dence, Alex Johnmeyer, Marvin-Alonzo Greer, and Tiélere Cheatem, and also Jesse, our ASL interpreter, and Diana, our CART interpreter, and Angela with her magical spinning gift card wheel. And thanks to all of you for coming. So if anybody has anything else, if not, that's the end, folks. I will email you everything at a later date in the next couple days.
Megan, this is Jesse. If you don't mind, if we have a small chat after everyone else
Absolutely.
leaves. Thanks.
Yes. All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Goodbye.
Yeah,
Goodbye.